Welcome back to Smoked BBQ Source. I'm Ricer, and today we're doing a short video on how I trim up an eaten brisket. I'm gonna make it into some pulled beef. We're not gonna trim this up so we win any prizes at the county fair or get medals and medallions hanging from our Letterman's jacket. We're just gonna eat it. This is just a standard choice brisket from Costco. This 11.5-pound brisket costs $48.35. Nothing fancy. And for pulled beef, I always use brisket. Using chuck roast these days and calling it poor man brisket anything really isn't true unless you're only gonna be looking for about 4 pounds. Whenever I'm trimming brisket, I always like to have a protective glove on, number one, and a very sharp knife. Basically cut the cryovac off, get it out, and try to keep as much blood in the plastic that as I can. Then I take a wad of paper towel and just dry it off a tad. I'm not too worried about it getting perfect, but it's good to get a little bit of this gobbledygook off. Keep your cutting board a little drier. There's a knife miss. This flap here, a little discolored. We don't need that on there. This is a little thin, but it'll work. On this side, there's a lot of fat. We got that hard deco over here, oxidized meat to cut off. Now for me, I actually really do use this fat for making sausage. A lot of people say that they're going to, but they end up just throwing it in the garbage. Sounds cooler, but most people don't save it. Another thing you can do with it, make it into some tallow. When it's nice and hot, just strain it through a coffee filter, bam. But don't feel bad about throwing this scrap out. If you want to make something out of it, go ahead. Now there's a couple knife misses here on this edge that we're gonna take off. This big knob on the end, I don't really care about it. We are gonna leave some of the fat on the fat cap side because it kind of works as a heat shield when you're running them fat cap down. Most of the time when I'm doing any type of pulled beef, I do run it fat cap up. But because I'm actually cooking a couple other briskets today and I'm looking to get some nice smoke ring on, we're gonna run all of them fat cap down, which means we are cutting off a little less fat. The hard deco fat like this is the stuff you're looking for. Now I don't get too crazy about cutting this out anymore. Everybody's different. A lot of people don't like fat and a lot of people do. Now I typically will leave the deco fat in between here and cut it out after it's all cooked up. This end piece right through here really is kind of a tougher part, but because I'm using this as pulled beef, it doesn't matter if some of this ends up in the smoker. I will cut off some of this silver skin because it's gonna develop a little bit better bark. When you're trimming this fat, you can be as fussy as you want. This one really isn't that hard to trim up for the style that we're doing. Now, when it's a choice brisket, it really doesn't matter if you cut a little meat off, and having it completely smooth isn't that important either to me. I do like to try to get it a little aerodynamic, but it doesn't have to be perfect. This gobbledygook right in here, we'll cut that out a little bit, and then we'll be able to really see that point. It's a pretty square brisket. Now, if you're gonna end up doing any type of slices, I'll sometimes lop this little end off so I know that this is where my slice directions are gonna come out of. Go back to the fat cap side. We'll try to take off a little bit more of this heavier deco fat just to even it out a little bit. It's okay to have a 1/4 inch or go a little less, oh well. I'm not worried about having the sides all rounded. This seems like this'll work. Now this big fat line through here, if you want, you can kind of cut a little bit of it out. Just makes the cooking process a little easier, but I'm not gonna worry about it today. It's a pretty small brisket now. If we were gonna cut slices, I'd end up taking a little bit more off, but I'm just gonna chop it up. And on the top up here, we're gonna leave this alone because that is our point, and that's got the most flavor in any brisket cut. So here you go, quick and easy, eaten style brisket. Nothing too fancy. Let's get our scrap and fat weight out. We have approximately 3.7 pounds of scrap. So we ended up with about an 8-pound brisket out of 11.5 total packers. So don't really be afraid to trim a brisket. Now you can have your butchers do it, but you see, it's pretty easy, especially if you're just going to eat it. Put some rub on it, smoke it until it's tender, and call it good. It doesn't have to be pretty, even if you want to take pictures and put it on Facebook. But I hope you learned something today. It's a fun little video, and we'll have other links in the description below that you can check out and maybe learn some more about brisket. But I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.